Welcome to the deep dive. Today we've got a really interesting set of materials, articles, some research notes, even video transcripts.
Right?
And it all centers on Pope Leo IV and a message he delivered. A message of hope, specifically aimed, it seems, at young people.
Yeah, and the context here, it's really something else, isn't it? The source is making clear this wasn't your typical Vatican address.
No, definitely not. He gave this message via video link, but the audience, they were gathered in Chicago at White Sox Park.
A baseball stadium. I mean, that alone tells you something. It was for an event celebrating his election, kind of a nod to his own roots on the South Side.
Exactly. You can almost picture it, right? A stadium, the crowd, church officials mingling with supporters, and the Pope on the big screen.
And they played both anthems, too. The sources mentioned that. Peru and the U.S., acknowledging his background.
It was his first sort of major message directed specifically at North America. And choosing that venue.
That really makes a statement. So, our task today for this deep dive is to really get into these sources, unpack what this message of hope actually contains.
And understand why youth. Why focus on them so directly? And what's the call to action here? For them and maybe, for everyone.
Let's dig in. What do the sources say he actually told these young people? He seems to start by acknowledging their reality.
Yeah, he doesn't gloss over the hard stuff. The sources say he spoke about times of isolation, real difficulty, even family troubles.
Especially things heightened by the pandemic, right? That comes through clearly.
Absolutely. That whole period of disruption, it hit young people hard. School, social life, everything.
And he connects that isolation, interestingly, to their faith life as well. The sources note he recognized that maybe they didn't have the usual chances to, live out their faith or be part of a community.
Right, so it's not just social disconnection. It potentially runs deeper, spiritually.
And emotionally, too. He explicitly mentions, according to the sources, feelings like anxiety, loneliness, depression, sadness. He names them.
He really gets into the heart of their struggles. And this is where I think it gets really interesting. He brings in Saint Augustine.
Ah, the restless hearts. That idea.
Exactly. He talks about young people having these restless hearts, living with so many questions, this sort of deep unease or searching.
Our hearts are restless until they rest in you. It's such a famous line.
It is. But the Pope's angle here, reading the sources, isn't that this restlessness is, bad or something you need to squash immediately.
Interesting. So what does he suggest?
He actually encourages them not to numb themselves to it all, not to ignore the tensions or the questions or the difficulties, but to actually get in touch with their hearts, to feel it.
That feels, it feels different, doesn't it? So much of the world tells you to distract yourself, find something to take your mind off discomfort.
Right. So, okay, if step one is acknowledging the reality, the restlessness, where does he point them for hope, for something more?
Well, he points them straight to the foundation, God's love, God's presence. The sources show he grounds it all in the Holy Trinity.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Yes, as this perfect model of love, unity, community. And the key is, this divine love, this incredible communion, it isn't just kept within God. It's shared with us, with humanity.
Like the ultimate source of connection and love itself.
Exactly. And from that foundation, he extends this really personal invitation to young people. He says, look inside. Look into your own hearts.
An inward turn.
Yeah. The sources say he calls them to recognize that God is already there, present, reaching out, calling them to get to know Jesus Christ.
It's not just theology, it's an experience he's pointing to.
Right. And he even suggests how that call might come. Maybe through scripture, sure, but also maybe through people. Friends, family, grandparents who have faith.
Those everyday connections.
Yeah. The crucial thing he emphasizes, according to the sources, is to just pay attention. Pay attention to God's presence within them and pay attention to that deep human longing for love that everyone has.
Okay, so you pay attention, you look inward. What happens then? What's the outcome?
He's very direct about this. The sources show when you encounter God's love, it's truly healing. That's the phrase used. It brings hope.
Especially for those feelings he mentioned earlier, the anxiety, the loneliness.
Precisely. He links encountering this love directly to finding healing and hope for those very struggles. And crucially, she ties it to community.
Ah, so it's not just an individual thing.
Not at all. He says that coming together in faith, in community, that's where you really discover this healing grace, this strength, this hope.
So it starts inside with acknowledging the heart and God's presence, but it has to move outward into connection.
Absolutely. That seems central. The sources highlight how he connects finding true meaning in our lives, another key phrase, with community, friendship, and also service.
Okay, tell me more about that connection. Community, friendship, service.
He encourages them actively, the sources say, to build up community friendship as brothers and sisters, not just abstractly, but in their daily lives, in families, parishes, even thinking globally.
So really investing in those relationships, living life side by side.
Exactly. And then there's service. He presents serving others as another vital way to find that true meaning.
How so?
By sharing the message of hope through outreach and service, by looking for ways to make the world better. He says that gives true life. It makes you a sign of hope for others.
So it becomes reciprocal. You receive hope, you find meaning, and then you become a source of it through service.
Precisely. And he brings this right down to the local level, the parish.
Yeah.
The sources show him encouraging young people to really embrace their local parishes.
See them as more than just buildings.
Yeah, see them as places where they can find that healing, that strength, that hope through God's grace, precisely because they are living our faith together in community. It's the practical, on-the-ground place for it.
Okay, so we have the context, the struggles, the restlessness. We have the source of healing, God's love inside, and the path. But community and service, what's the big call to action then? What's the mission he gives them?
This part, reading the sources, it feels really empowering. He doesn't just see them as needing help. He positions them as absolutely crucial. He calls them the promise of hope.
Wow.
And this statement,
Wow.
the world needs you.
That's huge, especially for young people who might feel adrift or ignored. A real affirmation.
Definitely. And he outlines a common mission, not just for them, but for the church, for society. And that mission is announce a message of true hope and promote peace and harmony among all peoples.
A massive goal. Peace and harmony. Announcing hope.
It is, and the sources suggest he's quite blunt about what gets in the way.
Which is?
Our own self-centeredness, basically.
Yeah.
He talks about the need to look beyond our own, if you will, egotistical ways. We need to find ways to actually come together to promote this hope. It requires moving beyond ourselves.
And I see Saint Augustine popping up again in the notes here.
Yes, he brings it back around, this idea that if you want to improve the world, if you want to promote hope and harmony out there, it starts here.
Inside yourself.
Inside yourself. With your own life, your own heart. He says the gathering is a faith community celebrating that shared journey that helps individuals become those beacons of hope.
Beacons of hope. That phrase really jumps out from the sources, doesn't it?
It seems absolutely central to his message. He's urging them. Be that light of hope. Be a true living example. Share what God has generously given you.
So recognize your own giftedness and let it shine outwards.
And to recognize that God can actually work through your life to reach other people. Your life can be the way that hope radiates out.
There's also an assurance tied into this, isn't there? Something from St. Paul.
Yes, he quotes St. Paul, hope does not disappoint. This isn't wishful thinking he's offering. It's a hope grounded firmly in faith in Jesus Christ. The sources make that link very clear. It's reliable, steadfast.
And God's part in all this, making it possible.
He stresses that God's love isn't something you earn. It's just poured out generously, freely. And the only thing God asks in return, according to this message, is that we are generous in sharing that love, sharing that hope.
It all comes back to grace and then passing it on.
Exactly. Rooted in grace, calling for selfless giving.
It's just striking how he weaves together this deep theology, Trinity, grace, Saint Augustine, Saint Paul, with such a relatable, almost down-to-earth delivery, especially considering the venue.
That White Sox park setting.
Yeah.
It adds so much texture. You know, the sources really dig into this aspect. It wasn't just some random stadium. It was his team's park.
Right. Robert Francis Prevost, the Chicago kid, the Sox fan.
They even mentioned the specific seat he apparently sat in for a 2005 World Series game.
Section 140, row 19. It's such a great detail. And the White Sox organization, they really embrace the connection.
Totally. The sources talk about number 14 jerseys being sold, his papal number, a mural going up, that picture of him in a Sox cap on social media.
And that number 14.
Yeah.
It has other resonance in Chicago sports too, right?
Yeah, sources picked up on that. Brooks Boyer, the White Sox VP, pointed out it's the number of Ernie Banks, the Cubs legend, and also Paul Konerko, the beloved former Sox captain. Sort of a neat symbolic link.
And Boyer actually invited him to throw out a first pitch.
That was brilliant. The sources have the quote. He even sent a baseball to the Vatican for practice. Boyer said, "The mound is waiting. Your crowd is certainly ready. And your team, the White Sox, is here with open arms. You pick the date."
It's fantastic. It just highlights this willingness to meet people where they are, using shared culture like baseball to talk about faith.
It's not faith versus the world, it's faith in the world. Faith in the context of everyday life, community passions.
Archbishop Cupich nailed it, didn't he? His quote in the sources, "I think I'm going to remember this moment as the Sermon of the Mount."
Perfect summary.
And sources also give us these lovely little insights from people who knew him way back when.
Like Sister Diane Brigant, his old teacher, called him a good student, said she still had the grade list to prove it. You can just feel her pride, her awesomeness, as she put it, when he was elected.
And Father John Marcellus, his high school classmate, they still email. Can you imagine?
Marcellus apparently emailed him right before the conclave, just saying, are still like you no matter what happens.
And Pope Leo's reply, according to Marcellus, was basically that he was sleeping fine because, quote, "an American is not going to be a pope." Shows you how unexpected it might have felt even to him.
Marcellus's description of him is so telling, based on decades of knowing him. Down to earth, a bridge builder, deliberate, thoughtful, prayerful, but also just a regular guy.
Even if they can't grab pizza and beer anymore, as Marcellus apparently joked.
Right. But Marcellus felt the world was better off with someone like that in charge. And, those personal descriptions, they really resonate with the message itself, don't they?
Right, absolutely. The bridge builder talks about community and harmony. The thoughtful, prayerful man talks about looking into your heart. The regular guy connects via a baseball stadium. It lends authenticity.
It all fits together.
So let's try and synthesize this deep dive, pulling from all these sources. Pope Leo IV is speaking directly to young people's real experiences, the isolation, the anxiety, the restlessness.
Yes, he starts by meeting them right there in that struggle. That's clear from the sources.
Then he guides them inward. Not to escape their feelings, but to find God's presence, God's love, right there in their hearts as the source of healing and true meaning.
But it's not a solitary quest. The sources stress it's deeply tied to community living faith together, building friendships, finding strength in the parish.
And that internal healing, that communal connection, it naturally flows outward into action, into service.
Yes, becoming those beacons of hope he talks about. Sharing the hope received, working for peace, for unity, embodying the message like Augustine and Paul urged. It's a call to actively participate in making the world better, starting from within.
It really is a holistic vision. It addresses the inner life, points to the divine, grounds it in community, and issues a call to mission in the world. Very comprehensive.
Leaves you with a lot to chew on.
It really does. Pope Leo calls young people to embrace their restless hearts, find God within, and build hope through community and service. It makes you wonder, what does embracing our own restlessness, our own deep questions and longings, truly look like in a world that constantly pushes us towards distraction and noise?
That's a powerful question to sit with.
Thank you for listening. See you next time.